I can't believe I've been doing this for 5 years. 2023 flew by for me. It was a rough year on the entertainment industry, but that just makes me happier that I seem to live in the past. I covered 17 shows and 3 film series in the past 12 months, so you know the drill. I rank my favorite episodes from the TV shows, some of which I no longer have the cleanest footage of. Fun when that happens. Obligatory statement that this isn't how I'd rank all the shows by quality, just their peaks. And my opinion ain't fact, I want you to say what your favorites were. Let's get into it. Number 17, Gadget, My Little Pony Tales. No doubt this is the weakest, best episode of the year. I left Gen 3 off because it's more of a film series than a TV series, but I did cover 2 My Little Pony incarnations again, and the first one gave us this sweet little story about a frog named Spot. The 7 ponies are picnicking one day when they find him with a broken leg and still want to keep him after he heals. They then learn that it isn't right to keep wild animals as if they were pets. That's really all there is to this. As characters, the ponies vary between showing their individual personalities to all pretty much acting the same, mainly in the second act. It's held up by Spot being cute in a weird way, frogs have their charm I guess, and the song at the end is a nice sentimental addition to the resolution. As one of those cartoons with a song in every episode, it's a good sign when the song impacts the package positively. This episode's a completely inoffensive piece of sugar, and that's why it's the best of My Little Pony Tales. Number 16, Pirate Island, Inspector Gadget. I think this show's fine in small doses, and the first season is mostly consistent in that area of quality, so picking my favorite was easy. The one with the worst voice acting.
Look, a distress signal.
Well, the fun started.
Come on, it makes the adventure so much more silly and ironic. The gimmick today is that Dr. Claw's taking a bunch of rich people hostage and hired a pirate, Peg Leg Peg, to abuse them into signing over their fortunes. It's full of your typical old school Inspector Gadget wackiness, Gadget getting into mishaps, Brain getting him out of them, and Penny figuring out how to save the day. A lot of episodes in this show live and die based on how funny and memorable the gimmick is, and the pirate theme would be enough to make this a memorable one, with decent new rearrangements of the Inspector Gadget theme. But the voices for the rich people are so stupid and exaggerated that they make this all so much better. They make me laugh because I don't know how seriously the voice actors were taking their roles. The main cast always turned in strong work, but with these bit players, I can't tell if they were phoning it in or making comedic genius ahead of its time. These rich people are just as foolish as Gadget, thinking this is all part of some elaborate getaway pirate adventure. So this would have been less fun if they all sounded straight-laced and proper. Much of the comedy in our world is rooted in the rejection of social norms, and that's just what Pirate Island did, rejected sounding remotely normal. Number 15, The Saga of Robopigger, Mighty Magiswords. This show should have had more half-hour episodes. It's got a lot of ingredients for sprawling adventures, and I'm usually left tuckered out by the 11-minute ones. That's not to say this one is slow-paced at all, it's very packed, and somehow finds the time to stop so Vamber and Prohias can make small talk. But they're given just long enough for the adventure to breathe, and for it to feel like things matter. Weird for an episode about a robotic pig that the warriors weren't even friends with until 2 seconds ago. This may be Robopigger's big spotlight, but he's breaking down and gotten kidnapped by the city of Galacton. Not only is the city good at kidnapping old robots, but it's very pretty with a rich set of color palettes and architecture. The rest of Riboflavin is still in the Middle Ages, so Galacton sticks out. I really like the villain of this place, Terabyte 11.0, a computer that's upgraded so much that it wants to destroy everything that isn't up to date. Given that this show's creative team took a lot of influence from old school Nintendo games, I understand why they'd want to spread the message that obsolete technology shouldn't be disposed of. Something that holds this episode down on the list is that it still finds a way to get lost. While it's good that they introduced the hyperspace Magisword and got some use out of it, the writers feel just as stranded in the Lavender Zone as the warriors. They create a new character called the Hug Bug just to help them get out of there, whose design and song are okay, but this all feels pretty disconnected from the main plot. I can at least see they wanted to step back from the chaos and take a few deep breaths, which I will salute just because it's Mighty Magiswords. Number 14, Hot Cocoa Bang Bang, The Cleveland Show. Being the best episode of The Cleveland Show shouldn't mean much, but here we are. This thing isn't too shabby. Cleveland has created a comic book superhero, Waiterman, out of his desire to have saved Donna from drowning back in high school. That's kinda sweet, so they go to San Diego Comic-Con to build interest, only for Donna to be confronted by Robert Rodriguez, who has the last copy of an embarrassing movie she starred in years ago. I'm saying as much as I can to keep this section as safe for all ages as the others. It's interesting that they got Robert Rodriguez to star as himself here, as his role in the story isn't very flattering. I guess anything can do to make Cleveland more heroic. In fact, the big chase Waiterman and Hot Cocoa have with Robert was a fun way to close out the story. Feels in line with both heroes' brand of adventure, and the random explosions are pure Seth MacFarlane Show random access humor in their most effective form. The Comic-Con stuff is aged sideways. While there is some commentary on how it had become more corporate and less catered to fantasy enthusiasts, there are some jokes that don't make as much sense as they did in 2011. Like, for instance, this was before Kevin Smith lost a lot of weight. Junior's plot about rounding up a gang of nerds to fight back against the mainstream intrusion is fine and all, but now you've got two action-packed climaxes, so this one doesn't have as much closure as the main story. But I am happy that the main story is as decent as it is. Number 13, Shrunken Heroes Quack Pack. It's really funny how this episode seems to be aware of one of Quack Pack's biggest problems, that the extent of the triplets' personalities is flavor of the week interests. It's kinda self-deprecating here.
Hey, could you guys see me as a... No.
Louie's obsessed with environmentalism today, saving endangered pug daddies from poachers, and having his world shattered when his hero, Dr. Noble, turns out to be just as big a crook. There's nuance to the over-the-top environmental message here. They're clear that these causes are noble, but also that being a vigilante will land you in trouble with police. You can't predict how much they'll care about these causes. Since this show was supposedly aimed at tweens, young people who are becoming more world-conscious and aware of these causes, they could have done a worse job with it. The shrinking adventure takes up less time than the title would lead you to believe, but it's fun while it lasts. I like when cartoons get to draw the world from this scale, and the action here is packed. As for Donald's plot, most of it is classic Donald Duck shenanigans in their purest possible form. You get to see a lot of Ken Powers in pain, which is good. Only when Daisy comes around do they try to tie it into the A-plot, and the stuff is cute while it lasts. But if only Dr. Noble is more honest in his intentions, wasn't so keen to distort the truth, said it like it was, had a... Why are you all looking at me like that?
Say the line!
The moral of the story is don't lie. Number 12, Agent of the Year, Tough Puppy. The best thing about this episode is that it acknowledges the joke with Birdbrain's henchman has been played out. But it's a good time regardless. I wouldn't want to fill this section with snide remarks. It's a competition episode where Dudley and Kitty are both competing for a trophy to arrest the most people. They both win, but they both lose. Funny number go up, but bad situation go down. Dudley Puppy and Kitty Catwell's dynamic is flat out great here. Kitty being smug and letting her potential get to her head, and Dudley making nonsensical comments to make up for never being taken seriously. The Chief and Keswick are also given good material here. Everyone's given something funny to say, which is a good feeling for such a varied ensemble. It's a shame Petropolis had an odd number of citizens, leaving them with an even score until the chameleon comes back into town. And hey, it's a chameleon episode. I had to show him some love. He'd earned this minute as the most effective villain in Petropolis. More animal jokes in this episode, which I was happy to see when returning to it. Dudley and Kitty both trip each other up with things cats and dogs would like. The Chief gets bombarded by tiny food. They have a stork as the town locksmith that opens locks with his beak. That's a neat idea. They had animal characteristics in mind for the script and animal instincts in mind for the plot. The thirst to be the best and the mutual passive-aggressive respect that comes out of a tiebreaker after they arrest the chameleon together. Cats and dogs should work together more often. What could happen? Number 11, X Takes a Holiday, The X's. This show tends to be pretty childish, though there are several episodes that can fully embrace it and pull you in, like this one. You get two incredibly sitcom-y plots with a spy twist, as per usual. The kids are throwing a party that gets out of hand, and the parents are out for dinner and find it super duper awkward. Anyone who's watched a second of American TV has somehow seen these done 1,000 times, so why not put an X's spin on them? Tuesday and Truman are a fun pair up here. They're usually at odds with each other, but now they have a common goal, to partay. Because they're spies, they have no privacy, so Glowface and Lorenzo crash the party and get into a fight with them. Despite the title, this is basically the A-plot, and there's a lot of action. There's a fun hero-villain rapport at play, how Truman seems to be pulling pranks on the villains off screen, and how they're totally fine playing along with a lie when Tuesday gets a call from Mr. and Mrs. And that portion of the episode is super charming. On one hand, we learn a little more about Mr. X's scientific beliefs.
And hey, look! This table! It's very flat.
Yes, just like the Earth.
But come on, that's a well-delivered line. It's refreshing to get one of these plots where they've got to act natural in public, where the comedy and tone are subdued. It makes the observational humor more effective, like this place is boring. We need to see it through the X's point of view to have some fun around here. It's funny, it's colourful, it's action-packed. This is the complete X's package as far as I'm concerned. Number 10, My Best Friend, Mina and the Count. This short is less than 7 minutes long, so I'll keep it brief. If Mina and the Count ever got more episodes or a full series, it should have only done something like this 1 or 2 more times. This is such a neat plot to see in any kind of supernatural friend cartoon. Mina gets teased by this bully called Nick for doing a report on Vlad, with even the chalkboard getting in on it. So Vlad helps her out by devising a plan for them to scare Nick. It fails once, but then succeeds with a little dramatic lighting. All around, strong characterization, strong direction, playful and touching story, and a couple good jokes here and there. It passes by quickly, but should leave a mostly positive impression. Number 9, Pika and Goliath, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl Seasons 10 and 11. The first half of Diamond and Pearl was way stronger than I was expecting, so no doubt this was going to go higher than the Pokemon episode usually does. This is another one that endlessly entertains me because of the silly voice acting. Mr. Show's dialogue and delivery sound like the modern dubbing team trying to replicate the weirdness of 4 Kids, or even parody it in places.
Back off, Jack! Scratch for your own catch! Huh? Go time! Booyah!
But it works because it makes him super obnoxious and makes you want Ash to beat him in battle. Mr. Show also trains with members of the Pikachu evolutionary family, and after they lose, Pale swoops in like a vulture and instills a thought in their head that Pikachu should get stronger by evolving with a Thunderstone. This has always been a criticism of the anime, that if Ash was really serious about his Pokemon being as strong as possible, he would have evolved Pikachu years ago to get more moves and inflict more damage. Even Pikachu seems to be briefly contemplating this in bed, but just like the last time this dilemma was brought up, the result would be Pikachu becoming less marketable, and in instances like this, being less visible proof that he's a capable Pokemon just the way he is. Ash delivers a golden quote during the rematch, "There's more to battling than size." Pika and Goliath is a masterful blend of what gives the anime its vast appeal. It's a mixture of funny, goofy anime, and cool, dramatic anime. And not to spoil the first series review I'm doing next year, but they keep this balance up.
Coming up on Cartoon Network. Next.
Number 8, Time Heals, Ben 10 Alien Force. Spoilers until this point. Don't you wish Season 3 could have gone differently? Never fear, that's what this episode's all about. Gwen tries to use time travel to go back to the premiere and prevent some of the major hurdles like Kevin mutating and the Omnitrix getting fritzy again. Professor Paradox tries to warn her that it'll be dangerous, but she doesn't listen and goes back to a world overthrown by Hex and Charmcaster. Remember in Charm's way? That's okay, you don't need to. The professor explains away that without his mutated powers, Kevin wasn't able to save the day, Ben wasn't able to help, and Gwen in this future is flat out dead. Usually these alternate timeline episodes don't make that much sense and serve more as a chance to see a darker version of the world we're used to, and that's what Time Heals accomplishes really well. Even though Gwen doesn't remember what happened by the end, as she nabs the spellbook and tells herself not to prevent the incident, it still says a lot about her character. She's willing to go through all of this hassle just to help Kevin out. They were getting really close to the message that it's what's on the inside that counts, but we got a cool what-if scenario out of it. Maybe this is an odd choice for favorite episode of Alien Force, but almost everything about it clicked for me. It's a Professor Paradox episode, he's always a delight, I like the story they went with, and I like the world they create. No idea yet if Ultimate Alien will have more stuff like this, but I can only wait and see. Number 7, a really crushing crush, Brandy and Mr. Whiskers. I could just leave it at it's an Ed episode. I love this dorky little otter so much, but it would be unfair to give him such a small place on the list, so here's why I think a really crushing crush is so great. It's the ultimate Brandy and Mr. Whiskers episode because it pits them together over something that matters, and what matters is the burgeoning love between two side characters who were due for some development. Ed and Lola had already had some banter, but now it's the first day of spring, the birds are out, the bees are out, and Whiskers is afraid he's gonna lose his best friend to throbbing biological urges. It seems like Brandy's the hero, wanting the story to go in the same direction the viewer might, but by the time she's whipping out the cue cards, it's clear she's projecting her own need for a boyfriend onto Lola. The two leads get into a sporty fight, which isn't too detached from reason since the ending implies they're gonna have to pay for all this. All the while, it's just neat seeing Ed and Lola hit it off and explain that they'll still have time for their friends as a couple. In a show with so much gross out, over-the-top slapstick and brains, I'm thankful when they all contribute to a good story with a satisfying ending, and that's what they delivered here. Number 6, Nursery Crimes, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. I've made my preference for the earlier, more horror-focused seasons of this show clear, so you might not be surprised that my number 1 pick is an early one. Late enough to have more yelling and fart noises, but in that sweet spot where they're still aiming to scare you. It's fairy tale time, and Grim, Billy, and Mandy each have their own story to tell. Billy's is just fluffy nonsense, Mandy's is just an excuse to watch dismemberment, and Grim's is where the bulk of the action happens, a Hansel and Gretel retelling gone awry. I've only now just realized how biased I am in favor of Hansel and Gretel adaptations, because my favorite Mickey Mouse Works episode was one too, and Tiny Toons is ranked pretty high as well. I swear it's a coincidence, but it seems like a fun story for cartoonists to play around with. This Billy and Mandy episode also has references to Humpty Dumpty, Snow White, Little Red Riding Hood, Mary Had a Little Lamb, and Pinocchio. Most of them are only shown on screen for a couple seconds, but they're all different and quite bizarre in the Big Bad Wolf's case. But this is a horror show, so they go in some pretty unsettling directions, all for the sake of dark humor by this point, but I'll gladly take Pinocchio planning to devour Billy's flesh, and the ominous ending where he and Mandy seem to be stuck in the book for the rest of the night as Grimm's fallen asleep. But I don't think the episode would make anyone fall asleep. And Beasts and Barbarians. Owen Zor wasn't Beasts and Barbarians. No one gets their comment pinned. Owen won. Show me the next Cartoon Network show I'm reviewing. Number 5, The Secret Door, Cat Scratch. This oft-forgotten Nicktoon has more to offer than people think, just like the Cramdilly estate. This episode takes a page out of Narnia, with Waffle spending a lot of time in a high fantasy world hidden in the mansion. Gordon and Blick find it one day, and are taken aback by how much stuff they can do. This whole sequence only lasts a minute at most, but it quickly endeared me to the secret world and convinced me it would be a haven for surreal art and limitless cartoony potential. The story in here's a gripping one for what it is. Waffle's king, he takes on a duel with the land's greatest threat, the Dragon Rider, and Gordon and Blick are left with an uncertain place in the secret world. That place being the dungeon. Waffle may be dumb, but there are moments like this throughout the show that demonstrate he wants what's best for his bros. Licorice. They pulled out all the stops for the boarding in this one, a lot of neat angles that show off how vast the world, the castle, and the boneyard are. No episode of Cat Scratch ever phoned it in, but as a genre adventure, I think this stands head and shoulders above the rest. The ending has to wrap things up quickly, but they weren't cheap about it. Of course Hovers was gonna be the Dragon Rider all along, of course this would upset the locals and get the cats banished, and best of all, of course Waffle would give up being king for his newts. It may be way too late for a second season now, so I'll take what I can get. Number 4, Beginnings, The Legend of Kora. Because this is a self-contained flashback to a different avatar, I guess this section can be largely spoiler-free. All this can really spoil is that Book 2 has giant jellyfish kites. In this two-parter, they tell the story of the very first avatar, Wan, and how he got his powers, through a little help from lion turtles, spirits, and a jellyfish kite. From the beginning, Wan is depicted as having more empathy for the world than your average human. He's a peasant living under the harsh rule of the peoples you have to be very clear and careful how you pronounce the name of. He gets firebending in the first place to help out a sick friend. Oh, and of course the first Avatar was a firebender. And it's good that their first journey is something that matters, and still matters 100-odd lifetimes later. But that's a long legacy kicking off here, so the art and animation teams pulled out all the stops in making this feel ancient. The colors are a bit more pale, the backgrounds are more painted, the spirits look more like Studio Ghibli creations than in more contemporary settings. And even when you're watching the episode, you'll be thinking presently that its events are so ancient and distant, and like every decision one makes matters. Part 2 is the more exciting of the two episodes, showing one battle Vaatu with Rava and master all 4 elements together, and is the best episode on this list to be directed by Ian Graham. Sorry, Hot Cocoa Bang Bang. If it's any consolation, Kora alone, my favourite episode to actually be about Kora and her legend, would occupy this same spot on the list. And both that and Beginnings are easily in my top 10 for the whole Avatar franchise. When I watched these ones, I'm still really happy this show was better than all my friends made it seem. Number 3, Two-Tone Town, Tiny Toon Adventures. Just like my favourite Animaniacs episode on last year's list, I guess I have a thing for Rugaverse shows digging deep into Looney Tunes' past. This episode takes us to a monochrome town in Acme Acres where all the black and white stars live, but they're struggling to scrape by due to their waning popularity. We've had some episodes already about the Tiny Toons spreading the value of black and white animation, so them planning to push these old timers back into the spotlight is in their code of ethics. And yeah, all the two-tone stars are very likable and leave strong impressions for only returning for one episode. If you think Foxy and Roxy look like bootlegs of Mickey and Minnie Mouse, that's because that's literally what they were. Walt Disney had to personally call Termite Terrace and order them to stop using Foxy and Roxy after 3 shorts. But oddly enough, Goopy Gear actually predates Goofy by a month. Wish I could say that's enough early animation history factoids, but that's what Toontown Town lives on. Your knowledge and appreciation for the early golden age of animation. What kind of jokes they do, how weird it would be if they interacted with then modern cartoons, and showing how big of a game changer the introduction of sound was. Both the bunnies have some golden moments here. Babs becomes the old Toons manager and coaches them in futuristic cartoon gags so they can have a shot at coming back, and Buster battles his own teachers for some music and sound effects. It's awesome seeing them apply what they've learned at Acme University to help out Toons in need, as though their character arcs are completed here. Also bittersweet in a way, as they start and end the episode with the fear that they'll eventually become old and forgotten as well, in an episode that aired only 3 months before they ran out of new episodes. You could say, well, they're back with Luniversity, but that has to be an alternate canon. If it isn't, I'm concerned. Number 2, Angelica Breaks a Leg, Rugrats. Back in my Rugrats review, I described this as feeling like a classic Simpsons episode that wound up in the wrong office. And I stick by that comparison because Angelica Breaks a Leg is brilliant on all fronts. The start's a gamble, almost making you feel sorry for Angelica with how no one's got the time to do anything with her. But then she gets an idea from the TV and is now the villainous brat you expect her to be. This has a strong rise and fall narrative, a hard inhale with a sweet exhale. Angelica tends to command authority over the other babies, but here she's got a ticket to control her aunt and uncle too, and they're in top form here. Dee Dee's patience is tested, but she's able to hold it out until Drew and Charlotte come back from Charlotte's power rowing trip. But Stu becomes a wreck. This is the episode with the famous chocolate pudding scene, but the build up to this moment is always great too. It's so relatable, even if you haven't been in this exact situation, because Angelica's as annoying as... yeah, that. With a lot of Rugrats episodes, there tends to be a danger that they might make Angelica too annoying, or the conflict too small scale and pointless. But for the most part, the early seasons are able to make these work really well through tight jokes and directing. It might be hard to remember a time when Rugrats was considered one of the most fresh and clever cartoons on television, but rewatching this one can bring you closer to that time. Number 1, The Flower, Wander Over Yonder. Spoilers until this point. For most of my time watching through Wander Over Yonder, it seemed like it would be a hassle to land on a favourite episode. But then I got to the flower, the last episode before the finale, and the choice was obvious. For much of the second season, Wanda and Sylvia have been running around trying to find a way to stop Lord Dominator, and now it seems too late. She's destroyed nearly every planet in the galaxy, and Wanda is on the verge of tears. So Sylvia finds a flower and does as much as she can to keep it alive. Seems like a sad tale, but I find it funny, and I feel so bad for finding it funny. Look at Wanda, this poor little stocking, welling up whenever the flower seems to be in danger. It shouldn't be amusing to see him keep reverting back to this mode whenever the flower goes limp. It should be rewarding to see these two critters work together to find a home where it can survive. And honestly, it is sweet seeing how far they'll travel just to give the flower a good home. But then Dominator comes along, teases them, and speeds up the flower's demise, and her only punishment is a revelation that she has hay fever and dainty sneezes. The episode seemed so chill until she showed up, but it's good they reminded you how much glee she takes in her evil, and this is what the setup to this whole episode is showing off. This is Sylvia at her best, being the more intelligent one of the main pair, but not to the point she knows everything. She's still got something to learn here, that just because Wanda's crying doesn't mean he's given up hope in the galaxy. But you could be mistaken. When that tear finally drops, it really seems devastating. Instead of a splash, the sound effect they use is a bell. It rings in your ears. But you're left with a positive message. The flower left behind spores along the way, and those blossom into new plants that are spread across the stars. All of this was for something. So that's my list. Disney won for a second year in a row, but everything on this list is a victory in my heart. But hey, Disney's gonna get a head start again next year.
I've got 101 reasons why you should stick around. 101 Dalmatians will be back here on Toon Disney.
See you all in 2024. We'll get flying cars, robot butlers, or reviews of 101 Dalmatians the series. Now go spend time with your loved ones. I won't be doing much while you're off cherishing the holidays, just taking notes on the ugly Sweeney and wondering if my parents are right to support me.
Pichu, sup, homeboy?
Pitch, pitch,